Hi, I'm Sam, and this is Signal Tower, the show where we talk to entrepreneurs about startups, design, and education. Today I'm joined by Kirill Zubovsky, who is the founder of Scoutzie, which is an online marketplace that connects designers and clients. Welcome to the show today.
Hey Sam.
So, before we begin the show, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm 26. I'm an engineer, and a couple of years ago, shortly after graduating from university, I moved out to West Coast because I knew I wanted to work on startups. So I just moved out and spent about a year hacking at different ideas, learning things, and just trying to understand where my passion was and what I wanted to do.
Great. So tell us a little bit about what your path to starting Scoutsie was like. So after you left school, I guess kind of why did you decide to move out west?
Sure. When I was in school, I did an internship for a telecom company, and at that time, I kind of realized that working at a big company wasn't for me. I wanted something that was a lot more agile, where I could, do a lot of things myself and just experiment and try them out. And at the same time, I took a business entrepreneurship class that also really inspired me to try new things. So that's kind of when I knew I wanted to do a startup, and I moved out here because the weather is better, in my opinion, and I just wanted to be in a place where I'd be surrounded by a lot of other entrepreneurs in a kind of Zen environment where I could spend time understanding what wanted to do without the pressure of having to get a job and stuff like that.
So did you
And
know anybody when you moved out there?
yeah, I had one friend who was already in Seattle, so I moved to Seattle first, and I had a friend there. Uh, so that was about all my friends on the West Coast, but it totally worked out great, because we hung out a bit, and then once I moved here, uh, the startup community is pretty vibrant in Seattle. So it was really easy to find new friends and talk to people. And like I told you in the our pre-interview, one of the startups that later sold to Amazon called T Street, they used to have a standing I don't know office hours slash hangout hour at a pub on a Thursday night. So the startup community would come together and talk about their problems, their businesses, their ideas, and that was a fantastic way to meet more people.
Yeah, and eventually they ended up giving you a desk for a while, right? They had like an open desk, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and that was really cool because they had an open desk. I mean, I still had to pay a couple $100 for it, but comparing to the prices in, say, if you wanted to get a desk in Silicon Valley, that was very generous.
Right.
And I got to sit there with them, see how they were working, and the best part was I was learning how to code. So if I had a problem, I could actually ask one of their developers for help, and they were super helpful. Like the problem, like something that would have taken me days to figure out as a new developer would be solved in a matter of minutes.
Right. Right. And so I guess how long of a period of time were you there with them?
A couple months.
Okay.
I tried different things. For a while, I worked from home. Then I had the desks there, and then I started working from coffee shops and home again. Because the thing is, I didn't, I told you I didn't want to have like a 9 to 5 job,
Right.
and having a desk in one place where I went every day kind of became a 9 to 5
Right. It
job.
felt
So
the same.
huh?
It felt the same.
It felt the same, yeah, and it kind of impacts creativity and impacts thinking, I think. So I wanted to once again start thinking broader than just the problem I was solving at that particular point. And working from coffee shops is awesome, right? So you get this background noise, you get people talking, and sometimes you overhear something funny that may inspire you, and sometimes the noise actually helps you tune everything out and focus on what you're doing. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, just like white noise.
Yep.
So, you also, I guess, worked on a few products and applied to Y Combinator and Techstars, and were initially you were denied. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. That's right. So when I started working and on my products and learning how to code, the first idea was called Attention HR, and it came out of my own need because once I graduated, there was that parental pressure of you got to get a job. So I tried to apply for a couple jobs, and the whole resume process was just atrocious, right? You write some ridiculous stuff in your resume that nobody reads. They just highlight the keywords. And I thought it was terrible. And really what I wanted to do, I had some industrial engineering skills. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just find clients who need that, like who have a problem that I can solve, so I can just go solve it for them much faster than they would do through, say, a bigger consultancy,
Right.
and much cheaper at the same time. And I actually tried that for a couple months in New York. I had a company going, I had business cards, most important stuff, Um, and I went out to a bunch of meetups and talked to people about what they were doing and the problems. And there were clients. It's just I wasn't ready for them, right? I was this fresh grad out of school, and they were expecting like a McKinsey type consultant.
Right.
So I thought it wouldn't be great if I could create a platform where I and others like me, my classmates could put up their skills, because by the time you graduate from university, you already have quite a bit of experience, especially if you do a long internship,
Right.
right? I thought it wouldn't be great if we put our skills on some online platform, kind of a marketplace where people can find us and just book us to work on their problem, maybe for 10 hours, for 100 hours, right? But kind of match the problems people are having with the skills available. And that was the project I was working on. And I applied to, I don't remember which one, but one of the incubators with that problem.
Right.
Didn't get in, and worked on it for a bit longer. And then I wouldn't say got discouraged, but maybe in a way, right? Like it's just really hard when you're working on a problem by yourself and you're not getting traction and you're getting rejected. So I paused it for a while, and I played it with a couple other projects. One of them was called PresenterMate,
Okay.
which is actually still live. It's presentermate.com,
Okay.
and it's, I swear, the simplest Mac app out there. All it does, it hides icons from your desktop. And the reason, I haven't told you about it, right? So,
Yeah, this is new.
yeah. And the reason I did that was I was kind of getting frustrated and maybe a little bit tired. And one week I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a break. I'll build something cool, something that I've never tried before. And I wouldn't say I'm a messy guy, but I like to have a lot of things on my desk and on my desktop, right? I want everything to be accessible, and
Right.
it's in a way where it's well organized in my head. But
Right.
if you look at it, it's complete cluster. So, but if you go into presentation, right, you can't really show up at a conference and show a desktop full of like 2,000 icons or whatever the maximum is that fits on a desktop. Uh, so I found a solution online where you could actually type a command into terminal that will hide the icons. And what it does, it basically disables a layer of your desktop. So I just
Interesting.
took that and I built it into the app and submitted it to the App Store.
Huh.
And I mean, it was a great process because at that point I had I had a thought. I'm like, I really gotta have a pretty icon. If people are gonna download it, it's gotta have a pretty icon. And then
Right.
I thought about it. I'm like, how much can how much would people charge? Probably a couple $100, because even an icon, right? It's a lot of effort.
Oh
You
yeah.
really gotta.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, I don't have a couple $100, and I was living off my savings from the internship.
Right.
So I was pretty much like eating Chipotle. Chipotle was the five-star restaurant for me at the time. Yeah. So, but instead I was like, okay, but I have $80. So I walked over to Best Buy and I got the stylus. What you call it?
Oh, the Wacom tablet?
Yeah, the Wacom tablet. Exactly. And I just like kind of like looked at a couple of pictures online of what I wanted the icon to look like, and then I drew it on the tablet. I'm like, it doesn't look too bad. Let's just go with it. And and the
That's
upside
great.
was I got a tablet and the logo.
Yeah. $80. There you go.
Exactly.
So let me ask you a question about about PresenterMate. What is this? What is it like? What is this built in? What goes into building like a Mac app?
Well, in that particular case, the building was easy, like I said, because it was the matter of figuring out like what the command is that would create the hiding effect from your
Okay.
desktop, right? And then packaging it into the app is also fairly straightforward because you can find a lot of information. The hard part at the time was actually submitting it to the App Store. Probably took 5 days to develop and draw the little icon, package it all together, and like a month afterwards to get it into the App Store.
Right.
Uh, yeah, that was a bit ridiculous, but I'm still happy. It still makes money. Like people still
That's
download it
awesome.
in a while.
I mean, I feel like little projects like this, it's like, and it's the little things like submitting PresenterMate to the App Store, things like that, where you learn something that's different, that you just, you haven't done it before, but it's just a good experience just to try and do something like that. So I guess let's talk a little bit about Scoutzie. So I can kind of, tell based on, working before on trying to build, you've got this kind of marketplace, Scoutzie is a marketplace. And it sounds like a lot of your experience leading up to it, a lot of those things, were related. So I guess, actually coming up and, deciding you wanted to do Scoutzie, like how did you decide that that was going to be the thing that you wanted to do?
I think the market decided it for me, but I was fortunate because when I was in Seattle, I met a designer here in Seattle called Kelly Smith, and at the time he was working on another startup.
Right.
But Kelly and I chatted, and he said, and I told him about the attention HR idea, and he said, people looking for designers could really use this right now. And I'm like, well, here's a designer and the business guy who's telling me that people need this stuff. Like, I think we found a potential for a product market fit,
That's perfect.
Yeah, and it was sort of perfect. And we originally actually started working on it with Kelly, but he was busy with, his startup at the time. So he's still our advisor and kind of involved in the company by helping out with it. But I took it from there and spent a couple months just developing the idea, sketching it out. The hardest part was probably getting the initial users because it actually required sending over 500 emails to people that I found online, designers,
Wow.
right? And I'd go and crawl through all sorts of design websites out there and, literally do it manually by looking at people's work and thinking, okay, is this good enough? Because I wanted to start with the group of like the best designers I could find. And then I send them an email saying, hey, I'm working on this Scoutzie thing. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be just for mobile designers. Well, at the time it was,
Right.
just for mobile designers. And, when we launch, you're going to be one of the few guys on there. And sure, maybe half of the people didn't respond, but the other half did. And early on, like the first 10 users, I didn't have the profile or uploading functions. I basically said, can you send me a folder of your photos?
So I could put them together.
Yeah, and then I would basically like go in, log in as a user, as a new user, put together their portfolio, and then change the password to, like a random password and send it over to them and say, hey, you've got an account.
That's awesome.
It was fun. I mean, thinking back about it, it was super exciting because from basically September to January, in 4 months, we went from just an idea of wouldn't this be great to boom, like a working site where it was tons of beautiful profiles. And maybe I'm running ahead of myself, but the way we launched, I don't know if you had the chance to read it or not, but it's kind of exciting. I emailed Michael Arrington
Right.
as I was working on Scoutzie, and I said, because I met him at a startup weekend in University of Washington,
Okay.
and I was like, okay, this guy looks smart. He's a new VC. He's sold a company. He could have a good advice. And I said, hey, Michael, I'm working on this thing called Scoutzie. Here's a link. Check it out. Let me know what you think. If you like it, tell your friends.
Right.
But I didn't tell them that I sent them a special link that basically automatically logged them in
Right.
past the front page or to show him what I was actually doing. So when I tell your friends, I meant tell your VC friends if they want to talk more. Instead, a couple hours later, I see massive spike to the site. And on the
Right.
site, there's nothing but a front page like that says, launching soon, give us your email. And massive spike, and I keep getting emails, right? And at that time, things were fairly manual, so my inbox is getting spammed with like all this notifications of people signing up, and I'm like,
Right.
what happened? I look on Twitter, and Arrington tweeted the link, but to him, I guess he didn't even see that there was no way for people to access it, or maybe he did, but basically everybody kept hitting our firewall, so to speak. Uh,
So what? So when they clicked that link, what did they see? Would they get to the back end, or were they not allowed in? Like, how did that?
They were not allowed in. They would just see a page that said, "Coming soon. Give us your email. We'll let you know." And actually, this may be a good advice for young entrepreneurs or people who are just starting out. That's a really good way to get a mailing list for the future. One mistake in retrospect that we did, we actually hustled and launched the site the next morning with just removing a few features, keeping some glitches in there. But we thought, well, there are so many people wanting to see it, let's give it to them. In retrospect, I should have kept it quiet for another couple weeks and let people slowly, because it just would have built me a much bigger customer list to start with.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's, I guess, kind of how you got a little bit about how you got your first designers and your first users. But I guess right now, if I'm a designer and, I'm looking for freelance work, why should I choose Scoutzie?
If you're a designer,
If I'm a designer.
that's a really good question. And unlike, so if you go, if you have your own portfolio, what happens is you get slammed with emails from people saying, I have this great app idea, come work with me, blah, 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 and then it doesn't go anywhere. And you can get hundreds of them a week.
Right.
And it's not very targeted. And at the same time, once you start with a conversation with somebody, what do you do, right? What do you do in terms of contracts, payments? How do you ensure that it's actually a successful project? And we actually, about a year ago, while we were going through Y Combinator, we actually inserted ourselves in between client and designer for the projects.
Right.
And help facilitate it, and in the process learn all the little things that could improve the quality of the project and kind of shield both client and designer from all the bad things that could happen. So if you're a client, if you're a designer on Scoutzie, when you get a project request, it's actually very targeted to you, because the client sorted for you, look through other people's portfolios, look through your information. They're already familiar with who you are and why you are the best choice for them among everybody else that they've seen.
Okay.
So each client might send 2 or 3 requests, but it's not like 100 requests to everybody that you could find.
Right. Right.
And we control it pretty tightly. And once you start the project, one of the great benefits is you actually get paid ahead. Well, the money doesn't go to your bank account, but we know the client is able to pay.
Okay. So it goes to like a Scoutzie holds it.
Our payment processor.
Right.
But yeah. So it gives the designer security of the fact that this client is legit and is willing to pay, we're super excited about it, because people could put up like $5,000 from their credit card for a project.
Right.
Before it even started, right? And that doesn't usually happen online. Like if you go to other marketplaces, the old ones that started like a couple of years ago, they're very much about cheap labor.
Right.
They're all about leveraging a person in Thailand who's willing to work for a lot less. And what happens there? You get bad clients because they want to treat people as a screwdriver. Basically, I've got something, do it for me, and if you don't do it well, I'll yell at you because I can, because you're on the internet. Exactly. And like we really don't like that. And on Scoutzie, it's all about you. It's basically great people working together online, but it's as if you were working offline,
Right.
right? So,
It's more
so
personal. It's
it's more personal and it's a lot more about your reputation for both designers and the clients, right? So if you're designing, you do good work and you get good reviews, you bubble up and you like almost level up because people see what a great job you've done for the clients.
right.
And and conversely, if you're a client and you get good reviews from designers, when you come back and work with other designers, they already know that you've had a successful project, you've paid for it, a designer left you a good review that you were good to work with. So we're building this transparent layer where it's all about just people and who they are, and we weed out the bad ones.
Right.
Yeah. And in the process, we've also built tools that really help people to go through the project. So, uh, you know, we rolled in things like proposals, right? So designers don't need to just send an email. They actually outline proposals in a way that's good for the client, in a way that we put scope and assumptions and prices, like something that the client can easily digest and understand whether it's good for them or not.
Right.
And we do the same to, say, designers' profiles. We ask them for specific information like how they work on the projects. What did they do for each particular project, right? What are their skills? Like, what do they think differentiates them from other people? And we ask for that because that's really what clients are looking for. It's just not necessarily obvious, but we kind of take the information from both designer and client and make it obvious for each other. So it
Right.
creates a really good synergy. And as you work on a project on Scoutzie, we guide you through project management steps. So we actually tell you what's coming next, right? We show you all your files, all your conversations. So if there's any ambiguity, you can always go back and read through it.
Right. So
It's
it's
just a
almost
real
like you guys have put together kind of a project management tool within Scoutzy, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's like you don't need to go out, you don't need to pay for base camp, you don't need to, you guys have payment processing integrated. So it's kind of like an kind of an all-in-one thing for designers.
Exactly. And for us, you only pay when you use it, right? So when you get the project, we do take a small fee,
Right.
but you don't have to pay for any of these tools before you get a client. And once you've got a client, I mean, paying is easy because well, now you've got a client. Uh,
That's right. That's right.
and we have some from the designer side, we have some really happy users who've done multiple projects already, and for them it's great because they don't have to go and hunt the internet for clients and kind of advertise themselves and spend all their energy on things that are not design, because we think it's really important for designers to work on what they're good at and what
Right.
they really want to do, which is really build beautiful interfaces, solve problems, organize data for clients and all design related stuff. But payments, project management, invoicing, contracts, that kind of stuff is all secondary and it shouldn't interfere with your work.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So do you guys have any like notable designers that are on Scoutzy?
Notable is a matter of perspective. If you browse through Scout's list, you'd see some designers that you'd find on other systems, where they'd have a bunch of likes in all other places. But the way I see it is notable is good for your particular need, right?
Okay.
And um, rather than focusing on even notable, because notable a few, right? Because they've done such a great job of building their brand. I'm even more interested in people who weren't notable and we brought them out and we showed them to clients and now they're doing work and now they're kind of super pumped about their work. For example, we had a designer, Carl from UK. He's done his first project came through Scoutzy,
Okay.
and I think he's an outstanding designer. But before he was, just a guy in UK, pretty humble with his portfolio, and now I think he's like the guy in UK with an awesome portfolio. Or maybe we got this guy Anthony. He's actually from Austin, Texas, And we met him when he was working at Evernote, and then eventually he quit Evernote, and he got a project through Scoutzie, which was a pretty sizable project. He actually convinced his wife, who is also a designer, to quit her design job, and together they started an agency called Fun Size.
Wow.
And now they've hired a couple more people to work on projects because they just grew so big, right? And that originated from a project on Scout.
Wow, you guys have to write a blog post or something about that. That's a great story. That's
Yes, we should.
yeah, take notes. That's pretty incredible. Um, so you guys are a marketplace, and marketplace startup kind of has the same. It's kind of the same thing as like a dating site. You know, you've got two audiences that you need to cater to. You've got designers on one hand and clients on the other. You know, how do you go about finding both of those? How do you balance that?
hmm The original group of designers, like I said, were basically emails from me to people that I could scout on the internet, like
Right.
on all sorts of other design platforms and blogs and articles. And thanks to them, we now got a pretty stable supply of designers because they're referring each other. We've actually got more designers that we're able to let in at this moment
Okay.
because we do have a curation process, and I basically look at every portfolio and make sure that it's well put together, that it's really stuff that will be appealing to our clients. Right, and because I want to know that you as a designer, you've put a lot of work into creating a portfolio before I let you into the site.
Right.
And maybe some people don't understand it. They would say, "Well, why should I put any work if you haven't let me in yet?" And that's because other people have, and other people are getting freelance gigs through Scoutzie, right? So when it comes to the choice of like letting you in or driving more traffic to them, I'm happy to drive more traffic to people who are already our members, who've already putting work into maintaining their portfolios. So we're pretty heavily on the curation aspect, and it's been great so far because it keeps the quality quite high.
Right.
And for the clients, a lot of them are coming from referrals from past clients or people who've heard about us. And the last 8 months we've spent building a lot of tools. I call this project management suite on the back end. And we didn't do a lot of marketing, but we are still getting traffic from all the old sources that
Right.
pretty big for us about a year ago. I mean, TechCrunch still driving traffic. Kevin Rose's blog is still driving traffic. Like little things like that. It's, at that time, you think that it's a one-time deal when they write about you, but really they trickle in traffic for months onwards. Uh, yeah,
What did Kevin Rose write about you guys?
he was actually at Y Combinator demo day when we pitched there, and he put us in the top 10 startups out of our batch of Y Combinator. There wasn't much writing. There was just here's
Just a
the
little
top
blurb,
10. Huh?
just like a
Yeah,
little
just a little
blurb.
blurb. Like this is the companies I really liked, and I think I may have offended Kevin though. Uh, I we were chatting as he was leaving YC, and he drives this beautiful Aston Martin.
Oh yeah, those are great cars.
They are, except I did mention that if I had the money to buy one, I would buy a Tesla.
That didn't go over too well with him.
I'm not sure, but again, it's the guy who tosses a raccoon around, so who knows?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. All right. Well, I guess, what other challenges do you guys have? What are the biggest hurdles that, you guys have had to cross or you foresee in the future?
I think one of the biggest challenges right now is connecting the mindset of our users with what we've created, because we have some power users who really love it and it works great for them, but we're still seeing a bit of a hurdle for new users, because what people are used to, especially for design, is that they would go to a big agency, uh, tell them about their kind of a problem, they'd say, I'm thinking of building this app.
Right.
And then an agency would sit down with them for a coffee and start working to hash out the ideas of the app. And in the process, charge the client like 5 times more than the app should have cost. Right? And that's kind of how things have been done for years through big agencies.
Right.
But now a lot of designers from those agencies are quitting and becoming freelancers, and that's when they're coming to Scoutzie. And the amazing advantage for clients is that you can now go directly to the person who would have worked on your application before, but now you don't have to talk to account managers, you don't have to pay for the office space, right? Because at the end of the day, all that stuff came out of your bill.
Right.
Now you just go directly to the person who is responsible for the work. You can talk to them a little bit to kind of hash out the ideas, pay them, get the work done, and be ready to go. Not only is it faster and cheaper and better experience because you're talking to the person, it's just a whole different experience.
Right.
That a lot of people are still kind of shocked at the simplicity of it. I've talked to our users who said, or new users who said, well, I'm looking for a designer for my startup. We just got a little bit of funding. We're thinking of hiring a full-time person, but it's been 3 months and I'm not really sure how to find one, and it's kind of hard because they're all busy, right? And I'd explain what Scoutzie does, and that basically in a matter of hours, you can go and contact people and get responses from the ones who are interested based on your match, and start working on the project and be done in a couple of weeks. And they're like, really? I could have done that? Like, seriously? That's possible? I'm like, yeah, it's possible. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it gets the job done. But a lot of people just have this mindset where it actually should take a long time and cost a lot of money. And we're trying to break through it and just show people that, look, especially in startups, it's better to get shit done than wait and think about how you will get it done when you get the right person.
You just have to go ahead and start.
You just have to go ahead and start. And we've done it ourselves, where we've actually worked with a couple designers on Scoutzie through Scoutzie, just to kind of dog food our product. And
right.
It's incredible because I can go to sleep, I can send a message to somebody in one of our designers, Keith. He's in Taiwan. I can say, hey,
wow.
Keith, we're working on this product page. Here's some ideas, but I'm not sure how to put it together tightly, so it's really appealing. But here's all the information that I've been able to put together so far.
Right.
And I'd wake up in the morning, and because of the time difference, here's a response from Keith saying, here's what the page would look like. What do you think? And I'd be like, awesome. Let's just, I would take that page and launch it the next day. And I'm not speaking hypothetically. We actually did that exact process for iOS 7 campaign that we were running at one point. Basically, 2 days before, about 2 days before Apple was going to announce iOS 7, we thought, wouldn't it be great if we just attracted a bunch of new clients who needed iOS 7 redesign? And we did this over the weekend, over like one night. And,
that's awesome.
And in your typical process, that would have taken huge time.
So for that campaign, what specifically did you guys put together?
You wouldn't be able to find it right now because it was kind of a one-time thing. But we put together a page with designers who were specifically, Scoutzie designers who were specifically doing Flat before Flat was popular.
Right.
And kind of a couple case studies of their prior projects, and basically an ability for you to start a project with them. And it worked out good, except for the fact that the page was also we had a flat design at that time too. And here's one lesson, maybe you don't want to be quite ahead of the curve on some things, because we looked at analytics and things were so flat and people were so not used to it. Part of it is our fault, but part is just, when things look very odd at first,
right,
you have a different reaction to it. Yeah. But overall, we were super happy kind of with the speed that we could execute on using our own tools.
Right. Yeah, that's great. You got, like you said, you got to eat your own dog food.
And as you do it, you learn so much more because you realize that what you thought was a great idea, once you start using it repeatedly, is a terrible idea, and you should really switch to something else.
Did you guys, I guess, learn have any other lessons that you could learn from through that process? Like what else did eating your own dog food teach you?
Mostly, it, mostly a lot of small lessons, right? And I'm a big proponent of design being this like evolving thing.
Iterative.
Iterative, yeah, it's an iterative process, and we're constantly, we're pushing code every couple of days for sure, and it's a little confusing for new users when things just change, but for the power users, and those are the ones who are doing a lot of projects, that's really good. And I've had feedback from people saying, I'm amazed that your platform like changes as I use it, and but we listen to them and we try to implement as much as we can, based on what our users are asking for. And that's, I think, is the way to go because we've had a couple sprints that took too long, where we took a couple weeks on features that later we realized were not core and did not really need to be there. Like one of the famous features, I guess, among our team is a cropping feature. A lot of designers said, "Hey, you guys have this kind of funky aspect ratio for uploads. Can we have a tool that lets us crop designs in quickly?" And we thought, okay, sure, we'll give it to you. We spent a couple weeks designing it, building the JavaScript, created it, and realized nobody was using it because they were still cropping everything in Photoshop. And in retrospect, we should have realized that right away that, well, designers are better at Photoshop than anybody else. So if they need to crop something to the right aspect ratio, the problem was basically not in the cropping tool, it's to telling them what the ratio was and how it would look like on their profile page. So eating your own dog food in a way allows you to think of what could be the smallest possible solution to a problem.
Right.
And oftentimes it's not what you think it is, right? You just kind of, it's the hardest part, I think, of development is how to not do anything.
That's that. I like that. I like that quote. Yeah, because I mean, you know, to make development changes take a pretty long time. So you have to, if you're a startup, the whole thing is about speed, moving quickly, but it is a lot of decision making. What should you build and what shouldn't you build? Um, with that said, I know you guys have been doing a lot of work on Scoutsie lately. Are there any features or anything like that that you can kind of preview or tell us about?
One thing that we're going to release sometime in the next couple of weeks is a more sophisticated search feature. Because right now you basically browse by category, right? So say if you're looking for a website, you would go and say a website, and then you have to browse through people's portfolios to see which who can do development for you and who is stronger at branding and who is stronger at say information design.
Right.
And we are going to put those features up front to make it really straightforward for you as a client to say, hey, this is my project and I need somebody who can do wireframes, right? And we'll just give you the list of people who qualify for that particular need. Because I think for our designers, it's important that they get just the right clients. And the faster you can kind of set the communication between the designer and the client, the higher chances for a successful project. And actually something, on that note, the reason we're doing that is because we've identified kind of a couple bottlenecks in the system. And we, from our data from last month, we know that once the people connect, it's incredible close rate. It's basically, I don't think anyone has ever seen close rate that high for an online platform. Uh, so now we want to put more clients into the system so that they can get their projects done quickly. When I say that you can start your project in a matter of hours, I'm not kidding. Our projects do start in a matter of hours.
So you're
So
online, you're looking for, I've got this iPhone app I want to build. I need a designer for it. I go online, and so I guess kind of like what is that process like?
right. So for a typical client, be like, I want an iPhone build. We'll just use a real example without talking about the client herself. But she came to Scoutzie and said, I've got an iPhone I want to build, and here are my wireframes. Oh, well, more specifically, she browsed around, for our iPhone designers and selected a few she liked. And then for them, and that's the key part in Scoutzie, you don't just submit a job to a job board, you submit it to the people you've picked to work with you. And we think it's really important because it's about individuals connecting
Right.
as much as your job getting done. So she picked a couple of designers and she said, "Here's the app I'm building. Here are the power." She had a PowerPoint presentation with basically mock-ups of what the app would be, and she reached out to a couple of designers and briefly talked to them about kind of the app. Designers ask questions, client asked questions about designers. She got a couple proposals pretty much right away from like once they discussed the details, right, from designers on how long this would take, how much this would cost, and then she just picked the designer that she liked based on all of those characteristics, paid with her credit card, and they started working the next day.
That's awesome.
I think so too.
So, Carol, if you have any advice, so I guess, what would you say, your most successful marketing tactic has been thus far?
Interesting question because we haven't tried many marketing tactics, right?
Okay.
I'm I guess coming out of Y Combinator, I'm a big believer that you gotta build something users really love, and that will advertise your product for you. And I think that was the best tactic because the users who've experienced the system and who've had great success, they loved it and they told other people about it.
So focus on the product first. That's the best marketing tactic, is to focus on the product.
And even not so much the product the way you see it, but solving the problem for your customers, your users, right? And giving them uh, the best solution for their problem. Yeah.
And I guess, do you have any other kind of thoughts for entrepreneurs out there?
I do. I do. And, I'm still a very young entrepreneur. I think because it's only been a couple of years and one company, I almost put myself in the one entrepreneur category because I think you gotta achieve really enormous success to the point where you can advise others on a lot of things. And for example, if you read F. Williams' post about Medium, right? That guy just made $2.5 billion with Twitter, but his post on media about what he's learned is very common. Basically, he's not bragging through the process, and I think that's where the real entrepreneurs are, and the rest of us are still trying to succeed. But based on what I've experienced so far and what I hear from my friends, I think three things. One, and that's very, you'll hear a resemblance from Y Combinator. One is you got to talk to users often and just ask them all the right and wrong questions, because it doesn't help either you or them if you're trying to guess what their behavior is like or why they do certain things. Just go and ask, right? For us, it solved a lot of problems or a lot of unknowns where we couldn't figure out why users were doing something. We just asked them, they told us, we fixed it, boom, the problem was solved for everybody.
And when you go ask users, how do you what's an example of actually how you do that? Do you just pick someone from a random list of all the users up there and say, hey, what do you think of the product? How do you actually go and ask your users what they think?
Yeah, I did, and it sounds kind of strange when you do that, right? But For us, I did that when we started the company, when I emailed a bunch of people asking if they want to join. And then for a while, we actually forgot about it because we were so busy building things. And then we restarted it and trying to do more of it now because, yeah, you just go and say, look, I didn't see you use this feature because as any startup has all sorts of metrics on what your users do, right? You can say, look, I didn't see you use this feature. Can you tell me why? And in our case, the user said it was a button that they didn't press, and they said, I just didn't know what would happen if I did. And it was critical enough step in the process where if something happened that they didn't expect, it would impact their client relationship. So once I told them, I'm like, look, when you click this button, here's all the steps that's going to happen, and that's what they're going to lead to. The next, we put it out there, and the next day we saw everyone who had this problem convert to start using the feature. And it was literally from me asking them, what's up?
That's awesome. So I guess, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just curious, how you actually reached out to. So other kind of advice for entrepreneurs.
So talking to users is one, and two, I think it's important to stay healthy.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, and even PG from Y Combinator added it to his list of the things you should do while you're at Y Combinator, like exercising. And I think as a startup founder, you tend to be so engaged in your product, and you want to build all the features, you want to do all the marketing, you want to do everything like now,
right?
Because why wait till tomorrow? And you end up working crazy hours, and that's not really good for your health. And once your health starts to deteriorate, right, like you start gaining weight, start drinking more coffee, that kind of deal, then your mental health goes down with it, right? You start to be more agitated. It's harder to focus on things. So if you keep yourself healthy, you got to work smarter, not necessarily longer. I mean, everybody works long hours, but then you got to use them effectively. And if you're just tired, it's not going to help you. And it's really easy, and I've seen a lot of my friends fall into the same trap. It's really easy to forget it and to think, just for a couple weeks, I'm going to work really hard, and then I'll catch up on rest and sleep and exercise. But it just builds up. So I think you got to remind yourself consciously to go to the gym, go for a run, whatever it is you do. Talk to users and exercise. That's PG's words, but now I know why they're so important. And the last thing, though, is not so much related to people who are already doing a startup. It's mostly for people who are thinking whether they want to do a startup, because I've seen in a lot of my friends or people who reached out to me just with questions, fear is a big factor. Everybody asks, what do you do with the unknown, right? Isn't that like, what if you fail? What if you don't know what you're doing? And maybe I should go get a job somewhere so I can experience how it's done. And there's just nothing you can do with fear except for not caring about it, because so what if you fail, right? You'll go back to where you started from and you'll do it again. But if you start now and just do things, then you'll find new things about you, new things about the market, your users, right? You'll be way better off by just trying things. But you gotta, as a wannabe founder, you gotta realize whether you actually want to do something or you're too afraid. And if you're too afraid, you should just stop and go back to wherever you were doing. But if you're like, know that you want to do it, but you're just a little bit fearful, forget about it and dive in, right? It's a binary option. You don't spend time on the fence wondering what would happen if you do something. You just got to do it.
It's a fantastic piece of advice. So I guess the last thing is, is there anything that I should have asked you but I didn't? Are there any questions that I needed, that any piece of advice or knowledge that you have that I should have asked you about but I didn't?
Like I said, I think it's too early for me to distribute knowledge, so to speak. But if folks who are listening to the show are interested in asking me a couple more questions afterwards, they're free to email me and I'll be happy to answer it.
All right. Well, then how can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on Twitter It's just my first name, last name as a Twitter handle. Or you can Google me and then you'll find a slew of differing links because I like new technology, so I end up having various profiles, Twitter, app.net, Subtle, Medium, Kip, you name it. I've got a few of them. So it depends on what you're interested in following. You could find me on various networks.
All right. Well, Kirill, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Sam. It was great.